Etta, I think probably some of those showers were spun off of it yesterday, but very happy we didn't get that. Still enjoying a little cloud cover from it today.
Oh, and it helped my sod that I put down last Saturday too.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are now streaming live on Facebook. It is 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Welcome to Gardening in the Panhandle Live. This is our holiday edition. We're going to be talking all things holiday plants. I apologize if I sound a little stuffy today. I've got some seasonal allergies I've been dealing with, but other than that, we're all here and we're all good. Again, holiday plants. So we've got with us today some of our favorites from over in the West, Larry Williams and Sheila Dunning from Okaloosa County. How are y'all today?
Doing good.
Awesome. And Stephen Greer, just next door in Santa Rosa County. Good to see you, Stephen.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Awesome. Good group of attendees today. We've got a good bunch of questions to ask. So we'll go ahead and dive right into it. Again, thank y'all for joining us today. So Sheila, we're going to start off with probably the most popular holiday plant. When you go to garden centers, you see that sea of red. So poinsettias. And the first question from a Zoom listener is how to take care of poinsettias. Just kind of a general question, but what are some pointers you can give us?
Well, keep in mind that those are modified leaves, not the true flowers that are showing you the color. So they do need to still be in a fairly bright spot. But full direct sun is going to cause some issues with the aging of those leaves. So a good window exposure, but not right in front of it. So several feet away, 4 or 5 feet at least away from that window. And it
will they turn green if they're in too much sun, or what happens?
They won't turn back again, no, but they will age very, very quickly and start to fall off the plant. It is only our most recent developments over the last 10 or 15 years where they have improved the ability for those bracts to stay on there. So, and they will now through, typically March, as long as they don't have to go through any extremes. So the next extreme that you would deal with would be those soil conditions. And it does need to just barely start to dry out before you water again. They are commonly grown from cuttings in these little propagation cubes that are now put into their potting media. And so it will dry pretty quickly, and you do want it to actually begin to dry on the surface before you water again. So use your finger, touch that surface. If soil is still sticking to your finger, wait another day, check again. However, they are usually pretty root bound. So an every other day watering's not out of the question. We get them often in that beautiful colored foil or fancy baskets or fancy containers. Well, that maintains a lot of extra moisture. And if you just happen to overwater it a little bit, you're going to end up with it sitting like a saucer. And that's going to lead to root rot and fungal problems. So make sure that that decorative cover is removed between waterings, or at least has some drainage to it. And they don't ever sit in water for any extended period of time. Like any holiday plant, no extremes on hots or colds. So don't forget when you're picking that spot, we don't want the air conditioner vent, the heater vent, all those things that are going to blow on it to also fluctuate the temperature of that plant and drying out that soil at different rates.
Gotcha. So a question that I kind of have is if you are using poinsettias to like decorate your porch, that's probably not the best idea because of possible temperature swings then, just kind of going off what you said there.
Well, and they will take into the 50s and even the low 40s and not respond poorly. But if they do threaten a freezing night, yes, do bring them in. They are still from Mexico, Central American countries also, where they are not used to freezing temperatures. So if you want to maintain your color through the whole season, bring them in on those cold nights.
Gotcha. And so the next question is, so we're going to assume that maybe this person is, overwintered a plant and is going to try to maintain it throughout the year. And the question here is, what soil is needed for poinsettias and pots if they were going to grow their own?
If they were going to start their own,
Yeah.
take the word soil and throw that out right away.
Okay.
It does need to be a light potting media or mix that is soilless. You don't want to be using composted material in
Gotcha.
that container. If it goes in a container, then make sure that it doesn't have those rotting, decaying parts that can lead to fungus gnats and other problems.
Gotcha.
But yeah, if you want to grow it from year to year, you can do it in that pot, but you're going to need to upgrade every year.
Yeah.
You
And
never,
upgrade that soil.
yeah, yes, exactly. Freshen up that soil. You don't do
just a standard high quality commercial potting mix.
Yep. And if it says potting mix or potting media, that would be great. If it says soil on the bag, keep looking. It
Okay.
should look like peat moss and a little bit of perlite in it.
Gotcha.
When you grab it by the hand, it should still fall apart on you, not squeeze up into a clump of hard soil. No.
Gotcha. So I think in my experience, if you go to a garden center or some sort of operation like that, and you're paying, under $6 or $7 for a 2 cubic foot bag of soil, you're probably not getting what you need as far as a potting mix goes. They tend to be heavy and with things that you don't want. So just kind of buyer beware there. Thanks, Sheila. So Stephen, I wanted to quick before we move on, just wanted to remind everybody, if you have additional questions or you hear us talk about something that you want clarified, just throw that in the chat to the panelists or in that Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So we thank you for doing that. So Stephen, so we've had this poinsettia, it's bloomed. So after the holiday poinsettia blooms, it's been beautiful over the holiday. We're having trouble keeping it alive. What should we do?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, I'll actually agree back with Sheila. I personally don't like extreme cold weather either, along with the poinsettias. I'd soon just pass on that.
There you go.
But when you're really looking at poinsettias, it's like everybody has this plant where you struggle with, and you can't figure out what am I doing incorrectly. My wife is like that with cyclamen. Yeah, I can grow cyclamen and almost ignore them, and they bloom great and continue on. And she does the same thing, and it doesn't. So I can't explain that part of it. Now, when you're inside a house, it's not the most ideal setting for poinsettias long term. It depends on when you pick it up, from the garden center or the greenhouse, and you bring it into your home setting. Did you do this in early November, or did you wait till right at Thanksgiving, or maybe even as late as the 1st of December? That short cycle helps somewhat. And if you've got somewhere you can move it to with a brighter room without the direct sun coming on it during those extreme time periods, because UV light's intense on those plants. It can be hard. Even though it's a tropical plant, it likes to be, you find it in nature, it's more of an high understory type plant. So that's kind of the gist of, I've even been in a situation where I've been in a very dark home, one of those long pitching roof pieces that come off the porch areas. I've had to actually take it outside, which is not a great thing to do because of wind movements. But warmth out there on those real warm days, get them in that partial shade area and water them and let the water thoroughly run through it so it can drain away and the soils have a chance to really kind of restabilize and not stay soaking wet like you might find inside, like Sheila talked about with the foil wrapped around it. Yeah. Gosh, I take a pencil. If somebody wants to keep the foil, I poke all kinds of holes in the bottom of it.
Yep, got to get drainage maintained. So I'm going to stay with you for this one. So kind of going with that, those were some excellent pointers. Our next Zoom question is, can flowering poinsettias be planted outside in the garden after the holidays? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, it is a tropical, or you might want to classify it as subtropical, but when you start getting in those temps, it doesn't take much of a freeze to wipe the whole plant out down to the base of the stem. I have worked with gardeners in the past where they've left it in a container and planted it out into the garden as we're moving into spring and keep it in a protected site and try to bring it back in and repot back up into a larger pot for the next year. I began to refer to those as the mother plant. Then, just like they used to in the old days in the greenhouse industry, they'd have a big old poinsettia in a corner that they took all the cuttings off of.
Sure.
That you're almost creating a mini situation like that if you're trying to put year round in the garden here. No,
Okay.
you really need to be in South Florida to have a shot at that.
Right. We're just not in that Central American climate like Sheila was mentioning earlier.
Yep. Yep.
But as much as we want to be sometimes. Okay. So good deal. Sheila, we're coming back to you for just some helpful hints. So after Christmas, our poinsettias, we need to do something else with them, but we don't necessarily want to throw them away. So what are some hints for, we've covered planting. Let's talk a little bit about pruning. Do poinsettias ever need any pruning if you want to kind of over summer them until the next year?
Oh, yes. If you definitely are considering trying to keep it in the landscape keep it for next year, when it has finished with its color, and it will naturally drop all those bracts on its own, you need to cut it back harshly. Harshly is more than 50%. Okay, so take it down to where it's only about a quarter of the height that it is. It's just going to leave you stems. That's okay. It will leaf back out again. Move it to that brighter light, but as Stephen mentioned, it is still an understory. It doesn't want that intense noontime blazing heat on it at all. So keep it in a semi-shaded area, at least some taller, thinner trees around it. Upgrade to a bigger pot. And now is the time to fertilize. Fertilizer will bring out all those new leaves and get it actively growing. Each time it grows 4 or 5 inches, cut 2 or 3 of it off and get it to branch out. So you get a nice full plant. But if you're really going to consider trying to turn colors, keep in mind that that's going to require covering it a minimum of 12 hours. And actually the color develops better at the 14 to 14 and a half hours, beginning in September. And that's an everyday task. They also need pretty moderate temperatures to get that color to come on evenly. And so finding somewhere where it's going to stay just under 70 and that you can pull a dark cloth over it every single day.
So we're trying to mimic short day length there with that?
Yeah, because that's why it's turning at that time of the year.
Okay.
Is because of those short days. And it really wants more than the 12 hours. So you got to start it early.
All right. Hey, that's a good tip. I had no clue. So I would have always just grown green poinsettias, I guess.
Well, and they will turn colors for you about February then, but then you've missed the season.
Right. That's like planting the Easter lily in the garden. It blooms in June or whatever it is. That's not particularly helpful.
And that's when it really wants to bloom, is in the summer.
All right. Good point. I did not know that. Excellent. And so just kind of recapping everything that you and Stephen and I and our panelists have been talking about here. If you've got poinsettias, if you're gifted one or you bought some, in your opinion, what's the best thing to do with them after the Christmas season? Is it best to try, or are you best to, start over next year with a new plant? What do you think?
Depends on what kind of gardener you are. If you've got that hobby greenhouse and you got a really cool one you want to experiment with, great. But if you're the novice and know you're not going to devote that attention to it, just start over again with the next.
It's really tough if you just have a well-lit room on the eastern or, that southwestern side of the house. It's almost impossible to keep it to the quality level that you're really looking for. I used to get more of the calls where it's this tall, spindly thing with a couple of cluster leaves at the top and frustration.
Yeah. So they will persist. Sheila, our mutual friend Tanessa Bird, has had one in the Walton County office for, I don't know, I was there for 4 years and it's still there. I presume it preceded me. So maybe a decade old. They will persist, but man, that's a sorry looking little plant.
Probably only about 7 or 8 years old, but sorry is a good description for it. I like Stephen's description, that little stick with the little tuft at the top not beautiful.
Poinsettias are very rewarding around the holidays.
Yep.
Daniel,
gardener, greenhouse growers grow it for you and enjoy it. That's the best way to look at it.
All right.
Daniel, this is Larry Williams. I've seen plants. My best advice sometimes is you need to put that plant out of its misery.
Yeah,
and buying new ones that they're professionally grown. That keeps those people in business as well. And you've got something you can enjoy. So they're hard to carry through and be happy with them.
Larry, I'm so glad you chimed in because we are going to go right into our next the next most asked about holiday plant, and that's the Christmas cactus. And so, or Thanksgiving cactus, there's different kinds, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But our first question here, Larry, from our Zoom listener is, how do you care for a Christmas cactus in November and December during its blooming period? So what kind of care does it need, if you bought one in the store? So from now until it finishes blooming, what should we be doing to it?
Yes, if you have one that's already blooming and was grown, you didn't grow it and go through the process. It's a short day plant as well. The best thing you can do, it doesn't need don't put it outside in direct sunlight. It needs relatively bright light coming from through a window. It's not a true cactus, so you have to be careful about the watering. It needs a little more water than you would think, but you don't want to overwater. It likes relatively cool temperatures, so you don't want it close to a heat source. This time of the year, we have this back and forth of temperatures. Your heater inside of your home might come on 1 week, and the next week it's the air conditioning on again. Right. So if it's setting close to a vent, that can cause problems with drying the plant out and erratic temperatures. So you want it to be, what's comfortable for most people indoors is comfortable for some of these plants. If you're outside in the sun and you can't move, you're going to get sunburn. But if you're inside close to a window where there's light coming through, that's more comfortable. We don't want to live in water ourselves, but we do need to replace water that's lost. So the number one reason for failure with most house plants or indoor plants, including these holiday plants, is simply overwatering. People walk past the plant and they don't check to see if water is needed. They water again, and that potting mix stays overly wet. With the Christmas cactus, it's easy to get root rot started, and good luck correcting that after the fact. You want to prevent it. So using a well-drained potting mix, watering only when the potting medium begins to dry out, keeping it in a relatively cool part of the house, that's relative to what people typically enjoy as far as indoor temperature, and light coming through a fairly well lit window will be the best that you can do.
Okay, good deal. So Larry, while we're on Christmas cactus, it's real popular for people to have these cactuses, for years and years, and maybe even pass them down, to their kids or another family member. And so if you're interested in doing that, sort of how would you get it to bloom every year? Does it do that on its own, or does it need any kind of special care for those subsequent years?
Yes. The Christmas cactus is one of my favorite holiday plants, but flowering, once the flowers initiate, you have the buds swelling and they begin to open. It can last for 7 to 8 weeks if plants are kept relatively cool. And I keep saying that, but I'm talking about ideally the high 60s, 68 degrees. Right. That may be a little bit cool for what, some people like indoors. You don't want it to stay overly hot. But Christmas cactus, being a short day plant, which is true with poinsettia and chrysanthemums, they respond to the shorter days and cooler temperatures of fall in order to stimulate flower production. The flower buds, this is interesting, the flower buds will form on the Christmas cactus regardless of day length when nighttime temperatures are 50 to 55 degrees. But when nighttime temperatures are 60 to 65 degrees, the plant must be protected from any amount of artificial light at night. That's the short day part. And this is basically from September to November that you want to protect it from light during that normal dark period.
Are you telling me my Christmas cactus on my front porch next to my front porch light is probably detrimentally affected by that?
It can limit the
oh no
flower bud initiation, but there is a simple way to work with this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Flower buds seldom form at night temperatures that's going to be above 70.
Okay,
And as crazy as our weather is in the Panhandle, that can happen.
sure.
So after flower buds are well developed, they'll bloom at normal room temperature. But if the temperature is at 90 degrees, now who has their indoor temperature at 90 degrees during this time of the year when the flower buds have fully developed? I'm not sure, but that could cause the flower buds to drop. Other stress-related factors can cause
Okay.
that too. But here's the thing that I have found. If you want to assure lots of flowers on the Christmas cactus, place the plant outdoors during the fall. So it's going to be exposed to the cooler temperatures, number one, but outdoors, the plant, you place it in a lightly shaded area. Do not put it out where it's going to be exposed to full sun. You'll need to provide protection or temporarily bring the plant indoors during high winds and heavy rain. Now, have we had any high winds or heavy rain
No, we don't
this
ever
year?
have that in Florida.
But most importantly, do not leave your plant outside. You remember, you're leaving it out during the fall, so it gets those cooler night temperatures and the shorter day length. But you do not want to make the mistake of leaving it outside when we're coming up to the possibility of a frost or a freeze. Now, I made this mistake one time and lost a very nice Christmas cactus as a result. But to provide the right conditions, if you can watch it and be careful about where it's located outdoors, leaving the Christmas cactus out there in the fall can help ensure lots of flower buds.
Okay, awesome. So that, man, you covered a lot there. I appreciate it. So that's kind of a primer on Christmas cactus. Sheila, this is a question that I've gotten. I mean, I've not necessarily had this question, but I've now got the question for you because I've had it happen to me. Why do the buds fall off Christmas cactus? And Larry kind of touched on a couple of them there, but maybe if you could just kind of drill down into that specific issue. And we've had several people ask this one.
Yeah, and bud drop is common, unfortunately,
Okay.
but as a result of any extreme temperature or sunlight. So unfortunately, what you see is they've been grown in greenhouses, they've been put on a truck, they've been brought into the retail outlets, and in that process, they've gone through some extremes in temperature and sunlight. And so then you take it to your house, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and all those buds fall off.
So
if
it
it's
might not have even been anything you necessarily did.
right, if it's a new plant, think about those issues, and
Okay.
when choosing one, choose one where the buds are a little more immature so that it can
Okay.
develop those buds under your conditions. Now, if it's one that you've kept from year to year, then yeah, it's something that you did. So rethink about, where you're keeping it and how you're watering it. Because if you've caused the bud drop, something changed dramatically under your care.
Okay.
But we hear it most of the time when someone buys a new one.
Yeah, so that kind of goes, correct me if I'm wrong, with most plants, you're better off to buy the ones that aren't necessarily in full bloom at that time.
Yes, tiny buds is really the way to buy them, but everybody kind of wants to see what the color's going to be, and
Can't
it's
always
always
trust the plant tags.
Yep. And especially these are really common in the grocery store, and look at the light variability you've got there, but those smaller buds will stick a little better than those that are starting to show color.
Okay. Larry, we got a question from one of our folks here in the chat. This is from one of our favorites over in Leon County, Miss Clara Mullins. And the question is, will Christmas cactus bloom if you site them outdoors in full shade? So more or less, will they still bloom, even if they're kind of just left outside in the shade? What do you think?
Well, that's a yes and no
Okay.
question. A lot of it again is the environment. I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to put it in areas where it's going to get the winds, and we do get even the fall of the year we'll get these storms that come through with wind that can easily damage those little flattened stems.
Yeah.
That can snap off and break off. And with that, you can have numerous flower buds snap off and break off.
Sure.
You even have to be careful where you place it in relationship. I've had plants close to a big oak tree I have in my backyard where the squirrels scurry up and down that tree, and
Yeah.
they can easily damage plants that are on the ground around that tree. Heavy rains, can cause problems. So it's not as simple. If you're careful about those kinds of things, where the plant's placed, wind, heavy rains, animals causing damage, it should still flower. Now, in our neck of the woods, it's not a plant that will typically survive the winter months. As we get cold enough, a little bit more south, that might happen. But you don't want to leave the Christmas cactus outdoors during winter freezes and heavy frost.
Gotcha. So Sheila, another question, all right, let's say we bought a little Christmas cactus in our cute little pot, but these plants can get pretty robust, so they quickly outgrow that. What kind of potting soil should we put those in when we go to pot them up into a larger pot?
Again, very well drained and no
Okay.
soil. It's got to be a potting media. I noticed someone was asking about, can you use cactus soil?
Yep.
Yeah, you absolutely can, or you can blend cactus soil with another good potting media. You can add sand to a good potting media for additional drainage.
Okay.
Just make sure that it's draining really well. They do want that top inch to begin to dry before water's introduced again. So it
Gotcha.
needs to drain through there pretty quickly.
Okay, awesome. And Larry, kind of once we've gotten it potted up, how would you recommend fertilizing the Christmas cactus?
You want to be careful with any of these plants. Remember, they're in containers, and I would not use, a fertilizer that you typically think of and using it in plant beds or in your lawn. You could possibly use one of the slow release fertilizers, but I think in most cases it's a little bit more safe to use one of the water soluble fertilizers, such as Peter's fertilizer or Miracle Grow. But be light-handed. You can begin fertilizing most of these plants in the springtime when they're blooming, when they're growing. About April, when it warms up and they begin active growth. And I would suggest, on the side of not fertilizing too much, maybe a light application once a month, beginning about April and maybe going through August, early September. But I would stop once you start seeing flower buds initiate.
Yeah. And you don't want these things to grow too fast and be constantly having to pot them up too. So just keep that in mind. All right. Thanks, Larry. So we've covered Christmas cactus pretty much in detail. If you have any more questions about that particular plant, throw it in the chat or call your local extension office. We're going to move on now to a fun little topic. We're going to cover some other holiday plants and just some general holiday plant care. But right now, I'm going to throw it around to all of our various panelists here. And we're going to briefly, these are my instructions, we're going to briefly talk about our personal favorite holiday plant. So tell me what it is and just a quick explanation as to why. So I'm going to go around clockwise fashion on my little screen here where I see everybody. So we'll start with Sheila. Tell us about your favorite holiday plant.
I'm going to have to pick poinsettias, of course.
Okay.
But what I like are some of the new introductions. Ecke Farms has been introducing something new every single year for a couple of decades. And so the little tiny compact ruffled type bracts that they call winter rose.
Okay.
It's a really cool one to have. Also, there's peppermint, where the flower bracts turn color.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Pinks and whites and various marbling within them. So I always like the new introductions. Yeah, the same old boring red poinsettia from, it's
not really doing it for you.
No, I really like the new ones that come on the market each year.
Okay. Keep up with that. That's pretty cool. Steven, we'll go with you next. What's your favorite holiday plant?
It's actually connected back to family. I used to hang out with my grandmother and grandfather, and then of course my dad and those things, and they always made sure that with the kitchen window, kitchen table area, they were looking into the backyard at all the plantings, and they really enjoyed watching the camellias bloom as we got into
my goodness, I can't believe you picked this. Go for it.
But if you had to press me down, I like all the colors, but if you had to press me to one because it's more of a narrow upright and fits in smaller gardens potentially, is Yuletide. It's been around for 30 years, but it has that solid red petal circling around the yellow center, so it's a real contrast in it.
Awesome. Well, I won't get on you too bad because I didn't pick a specific cultivar. So, but the spoiler alert for what's coming from me. Larry, what's your favorite holiday plant?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, Daniel, and we've talked about it quite a bit already.
Yeah.
It's the Christmas cactus. There's a wide range of colors available. I've mostly grown the red and, some different shades of red, but between the Christmas cactus and the Thanksgiving cactus, you can have colors of red, rose, purple, lavender, even peach, orange, kind of a cream and white colored.
If you had to pick one, what would you have on your porch or inside?
Normally, I like that for Christmas, the green and white. The green plant up against those red flowers, just as a Christmas. Those are Christmas colors, in my opinion. And
gotcha.
It can, with the care that we provided and talked about, it can last for many, many years.
Yeah. I know I've got a Christmas cactus that belonged to my great grandmother. So it's definitely, those can be special plants. So good choice. So as you might have already figured out, I'm going to go in with Stephen. My favorite holiday plant is camellia, specifically. And well, I'll get to that in a second. My reasons are same as Stephen's. We would have Christmas at my grandmother's, and every year, right outside, even from the time I was a little kid to today, I can remember this particular plant blooming, and it's the purple dawn, or some call it Methodiana Camellia japonica. Big purplish, purplish, kind of a rosy colored bloom, but a lot of purple, dark purpley blue in it. Just a special holiday plant to me, and it's one that I associate with family, good memories, and the holidays. So good call, Stephen.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Stephen, while we're talking about you, let's just go right into a different topic. So we've got these plants nowadays that are sold in nurseries that, not necessarily thought of as Christmas plants, but maybe they're, sheared or something into a Christmas tree. And one of the more popular ones now are rosemary. And so our question, I've purchased these rosemary plants shaped like Christmas trees. However, they begin to rot almost immediately. Have they been overwatered, and what should I do?
This comes back to where Sheila mentioned this earlier. You don't have a control and management of what's happening before that plant gets there. Are you buying this where it's sitting in the grocery store? It's an impulse buy. Has it been outside on the back of the grocery store setting on the asphalt for 3 days before it came in? Or has it been sitting in a pot overwatered and dark, and it's now starting to have deterioration of the stem and going into the base of the meat of the plant, getting down into the root system? So I don't really have a good answer for that, I guess is the best way to put it, because it can be multiple variables there. How did they handle with the fertilization of it coming in? A lot of it comes down to handling procedures. Now, if it looks like it was in good growth and habit, and you've had it in there for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks and you're starting to see issues, rosemaries are an outdoor plant. That's what you have to remember. You can keep them inside for a brief period of time, maybe for a given, let's say a focused party or family gathering. Not necessarily family gathering or party this year, but maybe in future years. But
wear your mask.
But get it outside, and it really likes to be in the ground. Larry had mentioned earlier before we all got, I think, online, but they do have a limitation in terms of age. They tend to age out. So how long has it been in that pot and before you got it? If it's been in there, let's say going into its 3rd year, it may be a little bit of limitation in how long it's going to last for you as opposed to growing outside. I have a tendency to want to break them off, reroot, and start again is what I do.
Yeah, I've seen these at, like a nursery where, they're pretty much watering everything every day, whether they need it or not. Rosemary is one that can grow, in the sands down at the beach, without a lot of water. So that
great salt tolerance.
Yeah. So all of that can definitely be an issue. So
you're searching for one at the nursery or grocery store, wherever you are. Don't go for the biggest bushy one. Look inside of it. Look at the base of the plant close to the soil. Make sure it's got a healthy stem.
Yeah.
If it's already getting that dark and soft area, or just stay away from it.
Set it right back down. So on the note, Stephen, with these holiday rosemary Christmas trees that are so popular, we had several folks ask if they can survive past the holidays. So
what's the answer? Quick answer is yes, they can.
Okay.
But there's there's a little bit of a no in that.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Because it, you know, the some of the root rots can be real common on rosemary, and so you have these real wet seasons. You have to be careful with the soils you're putting in. Like you mentioned, they like it warm and well drained. They like those soils. So if you've got it in a setting where potentially, let's just say you're not far away from a wetland setting, you're either going to need to grow it in a raised box setting, or you're going to have a whole lot of soil built up with a lot of sand in it.
Gotcha. So the answer, once again, it depends. So, that's a fun one. All right,
Yeah.
Sheila, we're going to switch to, we're kind of going through the greatest hits of holiday plants here. The next one up, cyclamen. Specifically, our Zoom question is on cyclamen heterofolium. Maybe just give us kind of a quick description of that plant. And then the question is, can it survive in our climate? So I assume they mean past the holidays.
Right. And they were forced to bloom for that holiday.
Okay.
So that is a little bit of an issue for you right off the bat. Realize that these are a tuber. They are a bulb-like structure in that soil. And it was actually chilled for a period of time in order to bring it out of dormancy. You will have that heart-shaped kind of succulent, dullish green with maybe some marbling in the leaves. And then the flower is really unique in that it turns upside down and folds the petals backwards, leaving you this pointed downward tubular structure to the center of it. It's kind of cool looking. But yeah, those that you see for those gift plants that first year have been manipulated to look that good. Now, can you do that again? It sounds like Stephen is the expert to go to on trying that.
Yeah.
They have the touch, but yeah, that poor little tuber is going to have to dry out again. And so letting it go completely dormant after it's flowered, most people see it as it's dying. Well, it does have to go dormant, and it has to restore that bulb, and you need to provide some fertilizer and let that storage capacity increase again before you attempt to have it bloom out again. If you can put it somewhere where you can get that temperature control and experience those cool nights. But traditionally in the ground, we're just too wet. We don't really have the extended cold that we really need. You have to manipulate that. So as a landscape plant, no, not great. But if can do the greenhouse or in the house, but keep in mind, takes a little bit of practice, because if you're off a little bit, plant gets smaller, flowers get smaller. It's just not looking the same year to year without a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time getting it that way.
So far, we've got like Christmas cactus and rosemary, like our beginner level. Then we move up, difficulty level, we got poinsettia. And then even another difficulty level past that is our cyclamen.
Yeah, and most of the time you didn't part with more than $10 for it. How much energy are you going to put into it for the next year? Treat it like a gift most of the time.
Gotcha. Fair enough. So Sheila, while we're talking about these good Christmas plants, all of these that we've talked about so far are imported. They're not native here, but we do have a lot of native plants that will do well and be attractive in the winter. So, in your opinion, what are some of the best native Christmas plants?
Well, if you start looking at the icons of Christmas, holly berries always stand out.
Okay.
And we have quite a few options in native hollies, that Ilex species, but there's or Ilex genus, but there's 2 or 3 different species that are native here.
Gotcha.
And do keep in mind though that is a dioecious plant, and so it's only the females that will have the berries. But if you recognize those in our dahoons or our yopons, American hollies, that the big red berries, they are something that you can clip for decoration. You can grow one and shape one in a container, just like the rosemary, if you wanted to do something like that as a gift type plant. But those growing out in the landscape, wonderful food source for migratory tropical birds.
Okay.
So added bonus of, as the birds move through, they're hanging out, and hey, there's an extra feature of the holidays.
Very cool. So yeah, so those Yopon hollies, and I have a quick question on that. So the ones that are of the holly species you mentioned, the selections sold in nurseries, those are typically going to be the female. So you can be kind of sure you're getting the berries. Is that true?
Ooh, they try to sell a lot of the female varieties, but some of
Okay.
the common landscape plants, like dwarf Yopon holly, is
Ooh.
exclusively male.
Okay.
So that one will never have berries on it.
Yeah.
However, it makes a good pollinator for some of the other varieties.
Okay.
And dwarf Burfordi is your best bet because they do typically, I hate to tell on a lot of these nursery guys, but they typically plant multiple stems in one pot.
Yeah.
So you've got pretty good odds that you're going to get berries, because somewhere in there's one of those stems is a female.
So some of the plant may have berries and some may not. Your mileage may vary.
Well, overall, it's got some berries on it. It's a
Okay. So yeah, holly's kind of the quintessential Northwest Florida native holiday plant. I like it.
And a clue might be if it's got a girl's name, it's probably a girl plant.
This is true.
Mary Nell, Nellie Stevens, those are good starters.
Yeah, and there's a Yopon, it's like Scarlet or something like that. So yeah, girl's name, you're probably on the right track. So Larry, this is a great question from a Zoom listener here. Must all holiday plants be potted? Are there any that will thrive outdoors? And we've touched on this quite a bit, but just kind of give us a summary of what we could do outdoors.
Well, like Sheila has said, and others, look for those. It's kind of what you define as a holiday, plant, Christmas plant.
Right.
If you're into the native hollies, absolutely. You've got that classic, dark green foliage up against those bright red berries based on the type of holly. We mentioned rosemary, which is a native plant.
Yep.
That could be a possibility, but one we haven't said a whole lot about is amaryllis.
That's true.
And amaryllis can be grown as a holiday plant, and it can certainly be something that you can plant outdoors. And with proper care, they do like good drainage. They like adequate sunlight. And there's lots of different colors of amaryllis. There's some the one that I think of the most has that traditional reddish colored flower, but there's almost a rainbow of colors. So amaryllis is certainly one that you could consider. We are far enough south that it will survive, grown correctly and well-drained soil. It can last for many, many years.
Gotcha. So yeah, Larry, you're the master of the segue. I'm so glad you brought up amaryllis, because now we're going to turn to Stephen here. Stephen, lots of questions about amaryllis. Let's go ahead and get into it. So
Okay.
all these amaryllis that you buy that are forced, and I'll let you talk a little bit. I think we've mentioned forcing, but kind of specifically talk about what that is. So after these forced amaryllis blooms, what should we do with them?
Okay. Ditto to Larry, by the way. So does that answer all of them?
Yeah. So, no.
But really, when you're looking at forced, a really good friend of my wife's lives in Seattle. So that's her Christmas gift to my wife. They swap gifts by UPS. And that's what she receives as amaryllis. And it's a great nursery out there, just in the northern part. It's actually in Kirkland. And we've got such great color and diversity of different type of amaryllis out there. And so we first start most of them indoors. We do like to use more of a potted soil. Some people will use stone and try and have water in the bottom. Our success rate with that hasn't been very good. We tend to, the performance it just doesn't turn quite the same as when you've got it in a potted soil and it's got a chance for the roots to really get out and disperse and a little bit of air movement in it. And so once those blooms wrap, and it takes several weeks, a good solid bulb is going to give you at least 2. Sometimes you'll squeeze out 3 blooms in different cycles on it, so it'll last a long time. So once that's wrapped up, you're pushing in the latter part of the season. We may try and push it out to the porch, going into that part of February. It's really starting to warm up, and slow get an acclimation going there, and then we move them straight to the ground and we plant them outside and let them acclimate and populate. They'll literally, for lack of a better word, colonize a given spot in the yard.
Yeah. I agree. Kind of all the holiday plants, this is the adaptable one for our area outside.
It is. It is. Well, I will tell you, we had a great looking grasshopper, yellow, probably
Yeah.
about 3 inches long, and enjoyed the leaves like you can't imagine. But it was later in the season. The plant had already produced the energy it needed for the bulb. So I just kind of helped escort it off the property. Let me put it that way.
I hear you. Yeah, my grandmother has a deer issue, and the deer really like her amaryllis leaves.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
I wouldn't have thought that, but they really, really do. So I see Sheila nodding there. So that's your cue, Sheila. We've got a Zoom question. So kind of going off of what Stephen talked about there, let's say, you know, we've got some amaryllis in our yard and we want to force some to bloom for the holidays. So how would we do that? How can you time that bloom?
So you're going to dig them up and force them to come inside.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, your problem is going to be that if you're doing that at the end of the summer and you want it to be flowering for the winter, that's going to be a challenge because it's already got foliage on it. It's already got leaves. And so in order to get that flower to be forced to come out at the time that you want, the plant has to be put into a dormant stage. So you're going to have to dig them pretty early, let them get dried out.
Define pretty early.
End of spring, early summer.
Okay. So like maybe late April, May, something like that.
Yeah, no, you're going to have to do it at the end of the spring when that bulb has fully restored itself. Now, you know, it can actively grow, but you're going to have to put it back to sleep.
Okay.
You're going to have to dig them up, let them dry out, put them in an area where the irrigation and the rain's not going to hit them. So, you know, in an open container or a newspaper or something in the garage or shed's a good spot, and let it go back to sleep again. All the leaves will come off, all those roots will dry up. And then come September, find you that refrigerator in the garage that holds refreshments. Yeah, okay. Not the one in the kitchen that's holding your apples or anything like that.
Yeah.
You don't want it anywhere where there'll be other fruit.
Right.
But an additional refrigerator, not a freezer, but a refrigerator, and keep it in there for 4 to 6 weeks prior to bringing it out, putting it in your container, and then allowing again another 4 to 6 weeks to bloom. So
I'm kind of doing the math here. So we're thinking like middle of September, it probably needs to start heading into the fridge.
Yes, and come Halloween, you need to start thinking about bringing it back out again.
Okay, excellent. That's awesome. So that if you are, wanting to force some amaryllis for the holidays, there's your option. Or you can give Stephen's nursery in Washington a call and order you some.
Yeah, let somebody else do that part of it.
Yeah, and there's plenty of them, readily available loose that you can buy in most of the nurseries, and they have been pre-chilled when they buy them, so you don't have to go through that additional chilling process.
I really like giving these for gifts. So if you've got people who don't like to garden all that much and have a quote unquote black thumb can grow amaryllis. So this is a gift that keeps on giving.
You've got my address, so just send me
Jelly Bean of the
some.
Month Club.
If you want to look at a bulb and you don't have that chilling time, paper white narcissus are readily available at that time too also.
This is true.
So you won't have to chill them, just pot them up and you got a quick and easy gift that's fragrant and flowering.
Awesome. So we've got 2 more questions. I got one for you, Sheila, and then Larry, we're going to come back around and wrap it up with you. So first, Sheila, our Zoom question, and Stephen talked about that he might not have had so much success with this, but will amaryllis bulbs rebloom in a glass container with the rocks, that's real popular, or should they go ahead and plant those in soil if they receive one? And if so, should they fertilize?
Okay, so when you get it initially, you're just going to water it that one time and let it come on out. Now, when they say rocks, is this an elevated bulb vase or is this a shallow container with just rocks? That would be my first question. But that first flowering, let that all finish. But if you want to do it again in that same container, you've still got to let it go completely dormant.
Gotcha.
So if it's in that heavy base, because this is a top heavy plant, so you want a heavy container. If it's a container with rocks, yeah, there's no problem. You can let it dry in that container and then do it the next year. But
Okay.
it is a bulb vase where the roots are actually sitting suspended over a water holding container.
That's
You
kind
will,
of what I've seen a lot. Yeah.
yeah, you will have to take it out of that and let it dry, so those roots will actually go dormant also. But you can still grow it in a vase. In the in between season when the foliage is there, it's got to be fertilized through all that to restore the bulb before you let it go dormant though.
We
So
need that energy to flower the next year,
yeah,
right?
but if it's that vase, you can add the fertilizer directly to that holding chamber.
Like a
No,
liquid into that suspension there.
right, and let it go ahead and grow out its leaves after the flower, and then pull it and dry it out.
Gotcha. Awesome. So there is your burning questions on the amaryllis in the rocks situation. Sort of amaryllis on the rocks. To make an adult beverage name that. So Larry, we're going to finish up here with you. Do holiday plants need any fertilizer? So you've received your plant or you've picked it up at the store. What should you add fertilizer to it after you buy it?
Not necessary at all. If
Okay.
you just intend to enjoy the plant through the holidays, and either for sure that you're not going to attempt to carry it over, for multiple years, there's no reason to fertilize. It can even be anti-productive, causing the flowers on some of these, if they flower, to drop off prematurely. So what we said earlier in answering the question about fertilizing, if you intend to keep the plant, you don't need to over fertilize there either. Again, in April, when they resume growth, about once a month. This is just a general rule of thumb through about early September, maybe August. You can fertilize monthly, April through August, early September. But if you're just going to dispose of it, enjoy it through the holiday season, there's no reason to waste your money and time fertilizing.
Okay. So you can kind of even abort those blooms and receive a negative impact that you might not have even thought about.
Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that we've said this, but make sure it's understood. On amaryllis, if you get one that's been forced to bloom and you decide you want to keep it and you plant it outdoors, its normal blooming time then will come late winter, early spring for most amaryllis that I've grown and that I'm familiar with. They will not rebloom on their own in a natural setting without being forced around Christmas season at all.
Yeah.
You can enjoy those though blooming in late winter, early spring,
Gotcha.
unless you want to go through all that trouble of trying to force them.
Yeah, it might be worth it just to try for the experience sometime. But I concur. My amaryllis bed is, y'all can probably tell me a little more accurately, but I feel like mine blooms around Valentine's Day, somewhere in there, maybe a little earlier. Is that about what y'all's experience has been?
Mine's been typically about mid-February to 1st of March, right in that time period.
Yeah, somewhere in that
I
range.
think, if you did your homework, and I've always thought this would be interesting. Sheila and I talked about this, I think, a number of years ago. If you really did your homework, I think you could greatly extend the flowering season of some of these bulbs, amaryllis, with some that come in a little later, but I've never really seriously looked into that. Most of the ones I've seen are blooming February, March, maybe into April a little bit.
Okay. Well, good deal. Sheila, I see you got a parting shot to add here. What you got?
If you decide you're going to dig one up and try it, remember, the bigger the bulb, the bigger the flower. So when you're digging up, go for the big ones. Leave the little ones in that ground for another year or two.
Okay.
Only the big one out of the ground.
All right. So as we're wrapping up here, do you guys have any sort of last minute holiday plant tips for folks? I'll just kind of go around. If you can leave everybody with a thought for the day. Sheila, what would yours be, even though you just gave us one?
Lay off the water.
Okay.
Make
Lay
sure
off
the plant needs it before you put it on there.
Okay. Very good.
Don't just water it. Stick your finger in there. Find out before you pull out the watering can. And if you feel anything in that silly foil, get rid of the foil. Or how many holes did Stephen say? Dozen or so? Just
Until my arm got tired.
There you go. All right, Stephen, what would you leave our listeners with today regarding holiday plants?
Make a list and send it to family and friend members, the specific ones you want, names and everything, and let them ship some to you.
There you go.
That's always been the fun part.
I hear that. And Larry, finally, let's hear it.
Well, I did notice in the chat that Dr. Pete Forgot, our district director, made a comment. Our amaryllis bloomed around Easter time in the spring, and he lives in Tallahassee area, so that's a little later. Of course, Easter does vary, but that's interesting. I like what you said earlier, Daniel, related to these plants. They can bring back a lot of memories. I think you said you have a Christmas cactus that was passed down to you. I think that's a cool part of the holidays.
For sure.
It's a great time to, be around family, but you can start a tradition or have something that brings back a lot of fond memories. So that to me is a good part of growing these plants.
Yeah. And I would just say,
I will.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I will tell you, this happens with us. Either our family's coming by to visit or somebody, and they brush by, like, let's say the cactus, and pop off a piece of it. I'll pick it up and repot and have more coming. I've always got that second, third generation on the way, just in case I lose something.
Awesome. And I will say that I've been a part of some dirty Santas around and about. The most one of the gifts that gets generally the most interest are those amaryllis bulbs. So fun dirty Santa idea, holiday plant. So specifically the bulbs. So we thank you guys for joining us. Unfortunately, this is our last Gardening in the Panhandle Live of 2020. So the last one of 2020. We are planning to resume production in the spring. So look for us again in January. Of course, follow us on Gardening in the Panhandle, subscribe to our newsletter, Facebook page, all of those things. You'll get advertisements for this, and you'll be first to know when we come back in the spring. But we're going to take a little bit of a winter break here. 2021, it's hard to believe, but that is when we will resume. Again, we have a survey that Beth Bowles threw in the chat there for us. Please take that. And we do look forward to seeing you in 2021. And for our Gardening in the Panhandle team, Julie McConnell, Beth Bowles, Matt Orwatt behind the scenes, our panelists today, and those who have been with us earlier in the year, we thank you very much for tuning in and listening. And we will see all of you guys next year. Enjoy your holiday plants.